that sort of conscience, if we can call it that, to kind of show them the way. But and maybe the podcast is a way to go about it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like the Tony Robbins analogy of a negligent parent. It says to a disturbed child, he says, if you blame your parent for everything that went wrong in your life, you have to blame them for everything that went right. And I think he was bang on there. And there was an interesting quote I read. I don't know where I got it from, but I'm keeping it. I can't claim it, but I can, if anyone knows the credits, please let me know in the link. Which is on point with the leadership style you're talking about, Caroline, which says, people don't care what you know until they know you care. And you talked about trust, Dale, and I think that's just like bang on. I love that. So feel free to steal that and use it everywhere, because I think it's just a great way to win hearts and minds. And quite rightly, post-corona, hopefully there's a lot more empathy and perspective and patience, and priority is reset in a way that allows people to realize that don't all have to be hustling in at 8:00 in the morning on the same bloody train. Just chill out. The work will get done. Yes. Because good people do good work. And they don't need to be there on the Henry Ford time clock, so good stuff. I mean, we got straight into this podcast. We didn't mess about at all, Dale. Straight on the rail tracks. But I wanted to talk about something creative and fascinating and fun that may elude a few people, and that's probably to start with a definition from you, Caroline, and then a bit of your experience around the word transformation. It's a big word.
Yes.
And I've heard a lot. It's used a lot. It's thrown about quite a bit. It can be politicized. It can be used in a negative connotation. It can be used as a positive drive. What's your take on transformation from a definition perspective, but also from a experience? What's PMO's role in that transformation space?
Transformation is not continuous improvement.
Ooh.
I'm just going to put that out there. It is not.
What's the difference? What's your difference?
Continuous improvement means you are somewhat remaining the same, but you're improving. It's a tweaking. It's like what you would think of with a race car, right? You go in for performance tuning. It's improving the performance of the vehicle. That's continuous.
But it's the same vehicle, effectively, not
It's the same vehicle.
Gotcha.
Transformation means you change the whole car. You have new engine. You have new suspension. You've got everything else is different. Transformation means it is no longer the same. And that could be...
But is the outcome the same? Like, as in, are you still racing? Would that be contextually so? Yeah.
Yes. Yep. The outcome could still be the same.
Gotcha.
But it might be better. Well, it should be better.
Absolutely. I love that. That's so good. That's a nice little nugget there.
No use transforming if you're doing the same thing.
So simply, it's a different product to get there. Is it faster, or is there something else that?
No, I think you're getting caught on the car analogy.
I'm stuck on the car thing. I'm sitting in the car right now. Just imagine going around, and then I upgrade to an Elon Musk SpaceX rocket, and then I'm back with you. My follow-on question around that was kind of what's PMO's role in transformation? Is it is it still their role?
I think the PMO has to transform itself. I think the way in which we have run PMOs to date needs to undergo radical transformation. And that's the only way that it's going to remain relevant. As technology changes, as ways of working changes, the PMO at its core will still perform the function of monitor and control. It will still perform the function of ensuring that planning practices are in place, good project management is in place, but its role needs to be results-driven. We need to stop looking backwards as a PMO. And so if the PMO wants to transform, it needs to be predicting what's coming and leading ahead and charging ahead and making way for others to do the same. And that's the way that I think we can ensure that PMOs continue to be relevant. We become the ones that pave the way for others. We set the tempo.
I like it. We set the tempo, Dale.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. We do set the tempo. Also, I think alluding back to kind of some of the previous pods, is sometimes if we're allowed to, sometimes we're not allowed to, in terms of, the dinosaur leadership style. But if we're allowed to, we touch every single area of the business, and we can set the tempo for whether it's transformation, delivering projects, whatever the case may be. But if I may, Caroline, I wanted to sort of touch back a little bit on your bio, to perhaps just before you made the transition from sort of your creative side into projects. I mean, just having a look at education, you've done teaching, you've done contemporary arts. I believe you're currently doing interior design. How do you borrow from that creative side into the PMO? Because some people that look at PM go, well, it's all numbers and logic, and it's it's cost and it's schedule and it's risk, and those are all just numbers and stuff. How do you get creative with PMO? Is there anything that you can bring across?
Oh, 100%. Yes, there is. The creative lens allows you to problem solve in a different way. It allows you to apply things like design thinking in a scenario where it might not normally fit, or people don't expect it to fit. I remember some of the first meetings that I had with groups of aeronautical engineers, and people are like, they're not creative. Engineers aren't creative. How could you go from being surrounded by artists and musicians to technical people? And my response was, they are actually some of the most creative people I've ever met, because you give them a problem, you give them a design, and you go, make it work, make it happen, transform it into something that actually changes lives or saves lives. That's creativity in motion. And so when I think about the PMO, our role is to do, as you said, is to analyze, is to interrogate, is to provide critical challenge, is to do all of those things. But it's also to help problem solve. And creativity gives us that lens. And I think it makes us think outside the box, and we're able to come up with new ways of doing things that might not necessarily fit the mold, but we'll get the results that we need.
Yeah. And I think Dale touched on a good point around allowed, like PMOs need permission. Do you still see that kind of behavior in organizations in 2020 and in previous roles?
Yes, I do, unfortunately. And that's where I think there's that old saying that ask for forgiveness, not for permission.
We love
and
that.
I think sometimes we need to do that. And then show the goodness
all the time.
And go, see, look, this is what we were doing, something we prepared earlier type of thing. And you win people over that way. But it's that whole concept of how you drive change and how you bring people on that journey. And as PMO, that OCM, organizational change management component, needs to be part of the DNA of a good PMO, because that means you go from having to ask for permission to actually having a seat at the table and being part of that decision-making process. And I found that when you've got the PMO front and center, the ones that are chairing those meetings, the ones that are directing the conversation, it goes from that we need to be allowed to we are empowered. And that's a gradual thing, but it comes back to your point earlier around trust. If they trust the people that are involved in that PMO, then that seat at the table is a given.
And in terms of maturity, if we've sort of at a bit of a growth curve, and we were basically from infancy to full adult lifehood of PMOs, and I know this is a tough one to ask, but just globally from your perspective, where are we on that in terms of how organizations view a PMO? Because we've had contrasting views, obviously, before, but the reason we'd like to ask this question again is because you have a different perspective, you have your experiences that you can share with us, and as we ask that same question over and over, we can gain a good expansive view globally as to the situation. So yeah, I'd be interested to know, do you think we're still in our infancy? Do you think we're, maybe teenagers?
I think we've had, in some cases, there's the case of Benjamin Button. There's a going back. Like in the finance sector, for example, especially in IT, the PMO performs a very traditional role. And it's slowly changing. So there's a movement, I guess, in the PMO where